Finally, Jaland Lowe is back for Kentucky, and you can go ahead and expect the Wildcats offense to look completely, and I mean completely different.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to be previewing Kentucky's matchup tonight against Valpo. More importantly, though, Jaland Lowe is back. Expect the offense to look completely different for the Cats. Going to explain why, as well as discuss the latest surrounding number one overall recruit, Tyran Stokes. He is withdrawing from school, or there's some potential issues there for the Wildcats? I don't think so. We'll break that down later on. And then to wrap up the show, Mark Pope is absolutely right about his team, for better or for worse. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can download the app today. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, would love it if you subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, we are also there as well. If you want to subscribe, join up. We will be live, obviously, after this game against the Valpo Beacons, believe it or not. Very interesting mascot here for Valpo. But first, before we talk a little bit about the game itself, let's talk about how Jaland Lowe is going to be back. According to Mark Pope, it has been confirmed Jaland will be playing against the Beacons later tonight. This completely changes the way Kentucky's offense is going to look. I don't necessarily mean in terms of where they're getting their shots type of thing, in terms of like shot selection, how they utilize different players, but in terms of fluidity and consistency, I think you are going to see the floor of what we have seen so far elevated. Obviously, during the blue and white game, whenever Lowe was out there, he was one of the most valuable players on the floor. Clearly, he just made everything look easier for his squad, and he's going to make everything look easier for Kentucky tonight, and that's kind of a no-brainer. I don't really know if this has to be said, but you need your lead guard, your only true point guard on the roster, if you want your offense to flow as easily as it possibly can. There was a chatter, I believe, in one of the more recent live streams here on the channel. I believe it might have been after the last game, and they made the comment that we might look back on this year and we may say a Caden Lewis, the 4-star freshman who decommitted and then went to Villanova, he might end up being the most important loss on this team, and we may look back and say, man, missing out on him was greatly impactful. It was a huge thing for this offense because they don't have a second ball handler, a second true point guard. I completely agree. Now, I really liked the work that Denzel Aberdeen did in the season opener against Nicholls, no doubt. And I am excited to see what he does moving forward. However, given the injuries that Kentucky has had, especially in recent years, and understanding where Lowe is at health-wise now, I'm almost certain he's going to be playing with a shoulder brace later tonight. I'd like to see Kentucky have some depth there. They're not going to get it this year, and I'm really concerned moving forward. Okay, if your offensive engine, the thing that makes this go in terms of making everything fluid, consistent, getting players open more consistently, the offense, I think, is going to play with a little bit more pace. Everything's going to look better. If that guy is not out there, you don't have a second option that is as capable as he is. And we'll talk a little bit more about this whenever we wrap up the show, about what Mark Pope has to say about this team, because I believe it's true. But I think Lowe here is the exception to what makes this team great. This is the biggest missing piece for Kentucky if he does not stay consistently healthy. And tonight against Valpo, I think you are going to see how valuable he is to this offense, but to this team as a whole. So what do we know about Valpo? What do we know about Valparaiso? Well, they're coached by Roger Powell, who is 22-44, 9-31 in the MVC during his 3 seasons there with the Beacons. He was an assistant at Gonzaga from 2019 to 2023. And the interesting thing about that note is that Pope actually said in an interview yesterday that Valpo's actions and their pace and the way that they kind of operate, it's very Gonzaga-like. And no duh, considering Powell is from that Mark Few tree. You can't really glean a whole lot statistically from them as far as what they've done this year. They have one win against the 325th best team in the country, according to Kim Palm, in Eastern Illinois. That was a 3-point win at home. They got to the foul line quite a bit in that game, but outside of that, they didn't really do a whole lot well. They shot the ball very poorly. They did a pretty decent job of keeping Eastern Illinois from playing efficient basketball as well, but they also could not keep them off the charity stripe. In fact, so far through one game, they have the highest opponent free throw rate in the country at 39.7%. Last year was 184th, which is like dead at average. So I don't really buy too much into it. So again, statistically, there's not a whole lot to glean. Last year, they were really good at not turning the ball over despite not having a ton of experience. They could not shoot well. They could not defend well. They played with a very, very slow pace on defense, meaning they worked teams late into the shot clock. They just could not finish. And then on offense, they played with quite a bit of pace, as Mark Pope noted. You get to see some Gonzaga stuff here. As far as personnel goes, there's not a ton of carryover. I'll give you 3 players to watch, but there's not a ton of experience that Coach Roger Powell and this Beacons team have. There are only 3 players that played against Eastern Illinois, and they had 11 guys rotate in. Only 3 players with multiple experience at the D1, multiple years of experience at the D1 level. Only 3. And none of those guys had more than 2 years of experience at the D1 level, or excuse me, 2 of those guys have more than 2 years at the D1 level, and only one of those guys has been at Valpo for multiple seasons. So you've got a couple of seniors, one of them a super senior, the other guy is a sophomore, and Justice McNair. You don't have a ton of experience to build on here if you're Coach Powell and this Valpo team going up against one of the deepest teams in the nation on the road. If you are not efficient, if you are not playing with pace, if you are not, well, actually, if you're not slowing the game down, I should say, and if you are not being as physical as you possibly can down low, I'm not sure if Valpo has an answer to win this game. Players to watch: Isaiah Barnes, who previously played at Michigan and Tulsa. You've got Owen Dees. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. No D's nuts jokes here. Legitimate shooter at 6'8", almost 10 points per game at Texas A&M Corpus Christi a season ago. You've got Rakeem Chaney, who had 5 steals and 12 points versus Eastern Illinois. He's a freshman in their backcourt. Not a whole lot to glean here, I think, in terms of experience, in terms of players to watch out. I really would watch for Barnes, I think, as far as the score. He scored 15 against Eastern Illinois. And then Mark Brown being their lead guard at just 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. Like, can you get maybe some production driving to the rim in this contest? I'm not exactly sure how this game's going to go down as far as style of play, but I will tell you, if Valpo wants to play with pace and they are not able to get shots to fall at the rim, they are going to struggle in this game. It's very similar to what happened again with Nichols. If you cannot score inside the arc, it is going to take a Herculean effort shooting from outside and preventing Kentucky from getting stuff going on defense for you to have a shot in this game. It looked really ugly against Nichols for a hot minute. I don't think you're going to see that tonight. I think Lowe is going to carry Kentucky through this game. If you want to look at Ken Palm as far as what they're projecting, this is a projected 93-61 win for Kentucky, just a 0.2% chance for Valpo to pull this one out. All due respect to the Beacons, who could be on the move this year. I think Kentucky's going to win this game. I think they're going to win it pretty handily. Would I say that they top 90 in this one? I'm not sure. Really just comes down to how Kentucky shoots. They haven't shot the ball well at all so far. That's my prediction, though. I think Kentucky wins. They win big. And I don't know if Valpo just has the horses, I should say. But those are the guys to know. That's the things to know about Valpo and the squad. Let's talk a little bit about Tyran Stokes. He is withdrawn from his school, Notre Dame High School. Are there any attitude concerns, any major concerns for the Wildcats here? I'm going to say no. And this kind of goes against what some other people are saying. And I'll explain myself here in just a moment. Before I do that, though, tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back. College basketball is back. And there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe, again, hanging out here with you. Would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the show if you have not already. Those are our brief thoughts about the Valpo game tonight. We'll obviously go much more in depth on Monday whenever we preview Kentucky versus Louisville. That's going to be a really fun contest. I'm so glad the season's back, guys. This is fun to be in the swing of things again. I've missed it so much, and I'm really, really excited that y'all are along for the ride with me. Okay, so Tyran Stokes, the number 1 overall recruit in the 2026 recruiting class, who has been projected to land at Kentucky for quite some time now. At least they have been the team to beat, so to speak, in this recruitment. 24/7 Sports putting a crystal ball in almost a month ago at this point. Actually, it might have been right at a month ago. The number 1 overall player that's supposed to be coming to Lexington at some point has withdrawn from Notre Dame High School. You will not be playing there for his senior year. There's a quote from Sports Illustrated. I'm not sure if this was immediately cited by SI or if this was a press release that Notre Dame High School put out, but the quote here is, Stokes was facing disciplinary issues at the school, including altercations with students. He served a No, this is a quote from SI. He served a suspension that kept him sidelined during multiple high school football games this season and has not been at school this week, according to sources close to the situation. So he's facing disciplinary issues, getting into trouble with students. He had started playing football earlier this year, but he's been sidelined because of the problems. He's not been to school. I believe they had a meeting. It might have been earlier this week, and both the school and Stokes decided to part ways. At least that was the way that it was put. And on top of this, we'll get to this in a second. Apparently, there's now the opportunity for Stokes to join Kentucky before this season's even over. Now, we'll get to that in a second, but first, I want to address this. Attitude issues, that's kind of been the conversation surrounding Stokes over the course of the summer, as far as it relates to Kentucky and where he wants to go. Obviously, the kid wants to kind of walk this recruitment out in his own terms. Kind of seems pretty obvious just based on the way things have gone and based on the way that reporting has kind of clashed with the end result here so far, as Stokes not committing yet, taking his time. Are there any issues, potential problems here for next year's team? I don't think there is. I think I'll give you 2 reasons why. Kentucky, well, I'll give you 3. Kentucky has had players in the past with mean streaks, with attitude issues, quote unquote. And more what I'm concerned about is less about what they've done before, what they do in high school as literal kids, and how they act as young men when they get to college, how they conduct themselves on and off the court. And reality here is that Pope and the staff, they're not just basketball coaches here, okay? They're going to be leaders for these young men. They're going to be coaching them up outside of stuff that they're doing on the court. They're not just basketball coaches. Neither was Calipari whenever he had to deal with some kids that had some mean streaks, some attitude issues. Managing personalities is a part of this job. That's the reality of it. It's not like we're walking into something that's going to shock Kentucky or Pope here. Just because Mark Pope is a little more soft-spoken, is a little kinder, is a little nicer to be around, doesn't mean he's going to put up with crap. It's not going to happen. Not in his program, not in any other major program in D1 that's worth their salt. They're not going to let one kid override the locker room or how things go with the program. If Pope wants this kid to come here and we think the attitude issues are any sort of concern, he's going to be able to rein that in pretty quick, I would imagine. He's the leader of this thing for a reason. I don't have any concerns as far as Stokes when he gets to Kentucky. As far as right now, yeah, there are some things that are happening. Obviously, as far as disciplinary actions go, as far as fights or whatever you might think with students. You can grow out of that. You can mature out of that. I'm not really concerned as far as what does he do when he gets to Kentucky, because he's going to have people around him that are going to hold him to a higher standard. I think he knows that. I think his staff knows that. I think it's going to be okay. If he comes here, it's going to be fine. If anything, at the end of the day, what you should be more concerned about is what he does on the court. How does he act on the court? How does he perform with this team? Because I'll just go ahead and tell you, if the kid wants to act a certain way, he's not going to play. At least he's not going to play as much as we think. And with the way that Pope likes to run his rotations, brother, I don't know if he's going to be playing as much as we think already. I think Kentucky's probably going to cut things down quite a bit and make things as balanced as possible at that wing spot. I think he'd be incredible at UK. I think he has the chance to really blossom into a great personality here at Kentucky. But as of right now, there are some concerns that people have. I'm not really concerned. I think this can be managed. I think he'll be fine. I don't think it would end up being an issue. There are too many reasons to think why it wouldn't be, because there are so many different things in place to prevent any sort of major issues happening. At the very least, not front-facing. We've obviously heard about different things going on in the past while Coach Cal has been here, ranging from not serious to serious. But this is not a problem, I don't think. I think this can be managed for sure. Or it might not end up being an issue at all whenever he gets here. Who knows? So that's my thought on that. And then let's wrap up the show here talking a little bit about what Mark Pope said about Kentucky. I want to reiterate some things here. This is probably the third time now we've talked about it on the show. But there's a little bit of a different light here that you can look at this in. Pope, after the loss to Georgetown in the exhibition, said that this team can be team great. They can be good as a unit. There's not an individual player that overwhelms you in terms of talent and in terms of ability that will take over games for you and win contests. I think he's absolutely right. In fact, I would say most teams are probably built like that. It's not common that you have a superstar. Now, teams have leaders. Teams have bucket getters. Teams have stop getters. Teams have players that lead, right? But this team can be team great. There is not an individual talent that will take everything over. However, I don't think Jaland Lowe is a take over the game type of player on this roster, but he is an elevate the game significantly more than any other player on this roster. He might not be the one getting the bucket. He might not be the one making the initial pass, but the gravity that he commands, and if his efficiency rises, we're going to really see how much attention teams give to him, I should say. But the gravity that he commands is going to be significant enough to where it's noticeable whenever he's not on the floor. There will be data that we can look at to reference this, I guarantee it. And there will be eye test that absolutely confirms it. It already has. This team can be team great. There's not a single player on this roster that impacts winning consistently more, I think, than Jaland Lowe. We are going to hopefully see a completely different offense tonight versus Valpo. Again, in terms of fluidity and consistency. You're going to see a much higher floor for Kentucky in terms of how they look stylistically. Now, the shots may not go in, but at least you will see more potential. If they do go in, it's just further confirmation that Lowe is as valuable to this team as we think he is. So Pope is absolutely true. Team great. Works as a unit. There's not a player on this roster that can take the game over. There is a player on this roster that can prevent the game from being taken over. And I think that's Jaland Lowe. If you want to talk defense, as far as preventing opponents from taking the game over, you look at Jaden Quaintance, absolutely, and he's still not played. Your two most impactful players at the 1 and the 5 have not played yet. We'll see how it goes tonight. We'll see if Quaintance is available for Louisville. He's already practicing 5-on-0. He's working his way in. My expectation at this point is for him to be back at the latest, start of December against North Carolina. He'll be here soon. Excited to see what the Cats look like then. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. Follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_. And you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all later tonight for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And of course, God bless.